Bright suns, and welcome back to the Hollywood Critic Association's Book of Boba Fett Aftershow. This morning we will be discussing Chapter 6, From the Desert Comes a Stranger, written and directed by Dave Filoni. And before we jump into this wish fulfillment episode, let's introduce ourselves. I'm Maggie Lovitt. I'm the managing editor of entertainment over at Wealth of Geeks, and I am a news editor over at Collider. And today I am joined by Laura, Dan, and John. Laura, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm a freelance reporter, freelance journalist for a whole bunch of different places, and the editor for the Nerds of Color. So nice to see everyone.
Excellent. And Dan, where can folks find you?
You can find me on YouTube, youtube.com/Dan Murrell Movies. I'm also on Twitter right now. I put out a little observation about the last night's episode that I think some people are enjoying, and you can, Patreon as well, patreon.com/Dan Murrell.
Excellent. And last but certainly not least, John, where can everyone find you?
Well, first of all, I'm still recovering from Dan Murrell not wearing a Florida State hat, so this is a little strange for me. It's a little strange.
I know, right?
I'm letting it go for now. You can follow me, or you can find me and all my stuff on my outlet, The Outlaw Nation. It's youtube.com/John Rocha Says. I co-host The Jedi Way, which is a podcast and a show I do on my channel with Laura Kelly. And we do the Geek Buddies reviews of these spoiler reviews every Friday talking about this episode. And I can't wait to get into this with you all. This is so much fun today.
This was such a fun episode. So at the top of this, I really want to get into our kind of general thoughts about this. More or less, the episode felt like a wish come true for so many Star Wars fans who wanted to see, Grogu training, wanted to see a very badass bounty hunter show up in live action, wanted to see the return of Ahsoka. So first up, let's go with Dan, because I have not seen your tweet yet. So I'm curious to know what observation you've made.
Well, it was a bad episode for people that wanted to see Boba Fett.
Yes.
Because we've now had 2 consecutive episodes where at least he appeared in this one. He didn't say anything, but he was there. That was what my tweet said. I said, this show's taking Boba Fett back to his roots, where he's absent 90% of the time and stands there silently the other 10%. Here's what I'll say. It's very obvious, and this started a little bit with Mandalorian, but this show has really made it obvious that the goal now with Star Wars is to make it a more holistic experience, meaning that there's so much crossover now between shows that it's not just things bleeding through the edges. It's just like you're ripping holes through things, which for people that follow everything Star Wars, I think is a great thing because now everything's coming together. I am more of an old school Star Wars fan in the sense that there were always sort of barriers, and like the Clone Wars was the story of what happened in between episode 2 and episode 3, and then you'd have these on either side. For me, it's losing me a little bit in the sense that there were some reveals, and I'm sure we'll talk about that, I didn't get the full impact of because I am not versed on every single Star Wars piece of media. And so, coming at it from that perspective, I think it was interesting because it makes me want to learn a little bit more. And then this show narratively is an absolute mess. I mean, let's be honest. There are cool things in it that we'll talk about, but narratively, I don't know what the outline for this show looked like going in, if there was one. So I will say that again. It's like we got a little bit of Mando, we got a little bit of Boba Fett, we got a little bit of Clone Wars, we got a little bit of a touch of this, a touch of that. Lots of stuff going on in this episode.
Yeah, it's interesting because, there's certainly plenty of shows that have, leads that people end up like hating or like it's like the least favorite character of a show. But I've never seen a show that has a character in its title and then completely abandons it in the final half of a season. And I feel like I would be maybe more okay with it if we knew there was another season, that we knew that there was more to come for Boba Fett, because we kind of stopped right at the start of his kind of character journey. We got through all those flashbacks in the first couple of episodes. He healed more or less, but there's still scars. And I know that before we came live, Laura and I were talking about the lack of Fennec Shand as well. So I would love to hear your thoughts, Laura. Where were you at the end of this episode?
No, I really like The Mandalorian season 3 right now. Last week I thought, okay, this will be a one-off and it should be fine as long as they go back to Boba Fett, because this is his story, this is his season. But when I saw that it started out with Mando, I was thinking, I'm like, oh no, like I hope they're not using his story as a clutch to like kind of draw in more people or to like take away from Boba Fett's story. This was my concern because like I love Dave Filoni. Everyone knows, like, if you look at my tweets, I love him to death. But it felt really off for me because I love the episode as a Star Wars fan. I'm like, oh my god, this is hitting all the notes I want. As a like someone who loves Clone Wars and someone who loves like all like the animated series, I was like, oh my god. But I also felt uncomfortable because as a Boba Fett person, I was expecting more of his story, and it just felt like kind of mixed up. Like they weren't sure what they wanted to tell, the story they wanted to tell. Like, we want to tell Baby Yoda, Grogu's story. We want to tell Mando's story, and a little bit of Cobb. We want to add like, yeah, our baby. Like I'm happy to see him, but I also felt like a little bit confused in like I felt a little bit confused, and so I really felt like I just out of it felt like it was out of place in a way for me. But and it's not seeing Fennec Shan until the end. I don't know. I just feel like we like since the beginning we've been saying we want more Fennec, we want more Fennec, we want more Fennec, and we still haven't gotten it. And it's almost the end of the series, the season. And because we don't know if there's a season 2, when were we going to see more of her and just more of her story with Boba Fett. So I don't know. I just felt like it was a little bit off. But as a Star Wars fan, I was like screaming my lungs off. Like, but other than that, like as a Boba Fett fan, I just felt like it was missing for me.
I agree. It's such a mixed bag to be like, this was such a great Star Wars story, but a terrible Boba Fett story. Now I'd love to know what John thought. What are your because you seem to be really excited, which admittedly I'm also very excited on Twitter about it. But
I'll be the lone dissenter in this group. I have no problem at all. I love this. I think it's fantastic. I don't have an issue with the narrative at all because someone kind of unlocked it for me last week when they said this is just a chapter in the overall story here that's being told. So just like chapters do in your favorite book that you read, you go on tangents of other stories with other characters and then wing on back to the overall story. So they had to establish the Mandalorian. And let me tell you about a word called synergy. And it seems to be that's what they're doing here.
Big synergy happening.
Yeah. And this is Disney. And you look, Kathleen Kennedy said this from the beginning. This is why they cut out all the legend stuff and push all that crap to the side. They said, this is going to be the lane, and this is the only lane, and you're going to need to watch stuff. You're going to need to be on top. We're going to reference it. It's up to you to catch up. That they made it very, very clear from the beginning with all the books, all the comic books, the animated series, all the stuff, that this is the canon, this is the lane. So for me, as someone who's watched all this stuff, this checked all my boxes. I love what's going on here. Look, I respect, of course, all y'all's points of views and totally hear your opinions, and they're very valid. For me, it's just like, it's working for me. And Boba, this is what we got. This is his story. He's been established over 4 episodes. And we veered off into 5 to get a little more Mandalorian because Mandalorian's going to play a big part in this final battle. And also, we need to lay the little bit of groundwork for Mandalorian season 3. So clearly, by the end of this episode, we know what season 3 is going to be, which is Baby Grogu going to choose the chainmail or the lightsaber? How's that going to affect things? And that's going to be the crux of season 3. So we may go back and forth between Grogu and Mando as the season goes along. So it just is kind of the the conceit you have to have with Disney, that they are going to connect all their stuff up and they're going to launch their other stuff through other stuff that is you're currently watching. So for me, it didn't bother me, and I loved this episode. And it feels like we're creating, as someone put in the chat here, a Filoni verse. And what a great way to bring back Ahsoka Tano. What a great way to touch on, hey, your dad. I mean, just when she referenced his dad, I lost my mind because I'm like, great. Now we're looping that in a little bit more. Where's that conversation? And then having Cad Bane come out like High Plains Drifter was just effing incredible for me. So overall, I didn't not only enjoy the episode, I liked the overall place they go, and coming back to Boba at the end, who has always been the strong silent type. And then I agree with you, Fennec. But Fennec was leading that briefing, so I have a feeling Fennec is going to lead the battle as we go into that last episode. But as I said, totally respect y'all's points of views. I just enjoyed it maybe a little bit more, and I'm enjoying the season a little bit more than I see some people enjoying it overall.
Now, here's a question. Where's everybody's letter grade? Because I feel like a letter grade for an episode is the quickest way to see where we all are. Because I'm an A. So, like, even though I have my issues with it, it dipped from an A+ last week to a solid A today. Where would you all grade it?
I'm an A++.
Okay.
And with the season being an overall B, I would say for me so far.
Solid. Laura?
Well, it's an A+ as a Star Wars fan, like, because like I screamed like throughout the whole time, the whole episode. I was like, oh my god, Cobb! Oh my god, Cad Bane! Oh my god, like, you know, I screamed like Ahsoka, you know, deep fake Luke. You know, I was like, yeah, like I was screaming the whole time. That's A+. But as a Boba Fett person who wants to follow that narrative, it was like maybe like a average, like, you know, it was. So I think the average would be probably total be a B. Okay. If you get because like a Star Wars fan, as a Boba Fett fan, I put it in the middle, so maybe a B as a.
That's solid. And Dan?
I mean, yeah, as an episode of TV, I give it a B, B-. I think it had 10-minute interludes that were like, if that Mando Luke Grogu thing was like a short film, then that'd be really great. But as like part of an ongoing episodic narrative that like I don't think they're going to even return to this month, this series. I mean, that's my big thing. It's like, it's not that I really have a huge part with the constituent elements of a lot of the show. It's that none of it fits together. It's like you're putting together 3 different puzzles at the same time, but they all are like supposed to be one picture. And it's like, well, no, because that's a picture of clouds. That's a picture of a dog. And that's a picture of Santa Claus. And the 3 don't. That's not a picture. That's just 3 different puzzles that you're kind of jamming together. So that's really my overall thing with the show, is just that it's, if you want to do what you're saying, John, and create the Filoni verse, I think that's great for Star Wars fans. But I think it's also about saying, like, then it's just the Star Wars Chronicles season 3, and then you can go anywhere and do anything. You can bring in any character. I think it's the idea of doing 4 episodes that were very much about Boba Fett. Yeah. And then transitioning to 2 episodes that have literally nothing to do with him on a character level, and, you know, even tangentially on a plot level. I would argue that, like, other than introducing Mando last week from a plot level was all about him. Yeah. I don't think that any of the Luke Grogu stuff from a plot level even ties to Boba Fett at all. So it's just sort of like bringing together all these different pieces. That's where I have the main issue with the show. Well, let me individually, the pieces aren't bad at all.
Yeah, I mean, of course I hear you, brother. And let me ask you something. If Grogu shows up, does that now make sense? Does it connect up for you if he shows up next week as a Force user in the battle with the chainmail, or do you think it's still too little, too late to kind of? I mean, it's sort of as a disparate element.
It's sort of the Avengers problem. Is that a Luke Skywalker level problem? Is that a or it's the idea of like, well, he's not going to fly himself to Tatooine, right? If he makes a different choice, it's just sort of the idea of I'm a big narrative guy. Like, narratively, what's the purpose of it other than bringing in this character and advancing Mando's story, which I think you could do in Mando season 3. That's my big thing with it. It's like, if Grogu shows up, then, you know, in service of what is his point other than being there, you know?
Yeah. So let's skip ahead past Cobb and talk about the Luke training Grogu scenario, which was obviously meant to do a lot of callbacks to Dagobah. You know, had him on his back. He was talking about Master Yoda, a lot of the same training scenarios. It sounds like Dan was not expecting that to be in today's episode. That definitely felt like something that was going to be. And I think we touched on this last week, that felt like something that would be reserved for Mando season 3. What were, everybody else's thoughts? Laura, what did you think about the scene and how it fits into the Boba Fett narrative and also the larger narrative that they're clearly building? It felt like with that Ahsoka scene later on that they were building up, that Luke will probably show up in the Ahsoka series as well. But, are we going to see Luke training other Jedi? I mean, Ben Solo is like 5 years old right now. So. Yeah,
like I felt like, if we see it, like John, like if we do see Baby Yoda come, like I know Grogu, it's just hard for my tongue to say that. Grogu come with a chain metal on his body and coming to battle, maybe I would feel better about it, like because it would be adorable. But also like it would connect the story, because I'm very into connecting the story that is currently being portrayed. Like I get that they want to set up season 3, but I need things to connect from like each episode, like the past connected to the present and how it connects to the overall story. But if we just see him having to choose the chainmail and the lightsaber, like I want that, and it's only for the saved for the Mandalorian, I kind of feel like a little bit gypped, because then it's like, no, I'm sorry, that's a bad word. I feel apologize for that. I feel like not, I feel tricked for that, like regarding that. And I, yeah, so I feel kind of like I needed to connect. I did love the scene though. I did love the scene. I did love the scene so much that them training. The deep fake of Luke Skywalker is the best I've ever seen, and made me feel
100%.
like someone could frame
Scary.
us for murder, because if that deep fake could be done anywhere, because that was the best I've ever seen. Like even when him climbing the tree and you see his clear face, it was amazing. Like just seeing that, and I just was in awe of that the whole, like the way that the CGI was done. Grogu, the CGI for Grogu has improved greatly from all the previous seasons. It was just beautiful. It was beautifully done, but I just wanted to somehow connect all together. But I did enjoy the scenes that they did have. Like it was beautifully done. It reflected well. I get it. It's gonna reflect Ahsoka's story, like her film or her series. But I just hope it all connects somehow. Like I just want to, if Luke shows up, like fighting with Boba Fett. That would be interesting actually, to see Boba Fett and Luke interact.
I would love to see that.
That would be interesting. And if that happens, I think I would feel better about the one-off. Like about like them showing the story. So it just needs to connect for me.
Yeah. John, thoughts,
Oh, God,
opinions? I'm sure you have many.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Dan makes an excellent point. If this had been a separate film, I would have lost my mind. There's that meme of in South Park where the dad is like, nerdgasming all over the place. That's pretty much my reaction would have been if I'd seen something like this. But, over the last couple of weeks, I've kind of come real clearly and in a way come to this point of view very crystal clearly in my mind. And that is, we need to get rid of this idea of bringing Luke back and bringing Leia back as being, we don't cross that line, we don't touch that line. We really need to break that once and for all in Star Wars. There are so many rich, interesting stories to tell about these characters as they get older in this world, as they see the things that they fought for falling apart or being misused or being abused or being overthrown. We've seen revolutions and the idea of revolutions come to pass in our real world. And then what happens after the revolution happens, what happens to those countries? It's rare that the countries end up becoming better, and so we're the exception. Us and I think France are some of the few exceptions where revolution actually led to a better democratically represented world or country. And so seeing the disillusionment of the youth as they get older and seeing what happens and having more perspective about life, it could teach a lot of things through Star Wars. I think it would be fascinating. So seeing Luke here now again, and which I did not expect, nor did I expect Baby Yoda. I thought for sure they weren't going to bring that back, but damn if they didn't bring it back. And I think there are so many lessons that are being taught here throughout for ourselves and them. And I wonder if that's going to play out at some point down the road here in this finale, And so I enjoyed the back and forth. I enjoyed the conversation. I mean, the geeking out over Ahsoka referencing Luke's dad, which I want to see that conversation when they first found out. When she first found out he was Anakin's son, I want to see that conversation. And I love that they laid the groundwork of, again, or reinforced it again, which way is Grogu going to go? Because people have been saying, well, if he has this power, he could use it for evil. We've seen him choke things out. We've seen him do these things. So that's laying the groundwork there as well. Which way is he going to go? So overall, I thought it was fantastic. I really enjoyed the hell out of it. So many great lessons. And yeah, they're launching Ahsoka off of this, just like they brought in Boba to launch Book of Boba Fett off of Mandalorian. So it's their pattern. And for me, I don't have as much of an issue with it as as some people do, and I totally respect that. It's just for me, it kind of totally works, you know.
You bring up a really interesting point with talking about how Luke feels like they're testing the waters for bringing back this younger version of a lot of the original trilogy.
Yes.
And like, I would personally love to see Bloodlines, Claudia Gray's book.
Exactly what I'm
the
thinking.
whole thing where they find out that, like, people find out that Leia is Darth Vader's kid, and like the Whisper campaign against her in that. I felt like with them talking about, you know, Ahsoka knowing who they are, that's laying the groundwork for something like that eventually coming out.
Yeah.
You know, there's plenty of room for that to happen, and I hope it does. Which, you know, I think for me, both Mando and the Book of Boba Fett has made me appreciate characters in ways that I didn't previously appreciate them. Like, I had a full, like, 180 with Boba Fett, but now I'm also warming up to Luke Skywalker in a way that I never did. I never like disliked him. He was just not Han Solo. Like, I was a Han Solo girl, loved Han, could not understand the obsession with Luke. Like, I was like, Leia's right there. But now I'm like, oh, I really do hope we see more of Luke. Like, this whole storyline for him is like oddly warming me up to him. I have action figures of him now. Never thought that was going to happen. So it is interesting how they're using these shows to kind of introduce and reintroduce characters to an audience that wasn't there from the beginning. Like, I'm a prequel era kid, so like they're merging that. I mean, we got Order 66 today.
Yeah,
I was shocked by that. I thought we were going to see somebody else. Like, I was like, which Jedi is that? Which sort of like clone trooper is that? Like, I love it. I love it. And, you know, we're getting Cad Bane. I had to like pause that and be like, okay, Mom, this is Cad Bane. He's this bounty hunter for this, and like try to explain, because like a lot of the general audience are unfamiliar with these characters.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Like
That's
Dan.
fair.
And that's I actually had a specific question for you, Dan. And we'll jump ahead. This episode's kind of all over the place, so it kind of matches this flow.
Kind of like this last one. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. How does it work for you as somebody who is unfamiliar with a lot of these characters from the auxiliary content? How is it impacting your enjoyment of the show?
I mean, I knew it was fairly obvious to me he was supposed to be somebody like that people knew, because it had all of the hallmarks of like a big reveal. So I mean, it translated at least to the fact it's like, okay, obviously this is a character who a lot of people are very familiar with. I think that it there's a fracture point, and it all kind of goes back to John, you know, and what everyone really been saying about the idea of creating one universe in which characters cross over at will. I think that there's sort of a dividing line there. There's the line that I think that Disney wants people to cross over to, which is like, okay, well, in order to follow an individual show that I want to watch, whether that be Mandalorian or Boba Fett or whatever, I now need to go back to fully appreciate it and learn all of these characters and watch all of these other shows. That's what Disney wants. They want people that are going to spend time on Disney Plus watching Clone Wars and tweet about their shows and etc., because that builds Star Wars as a brand, synergy, as John was saying. There's another side to that though, where I think that there are some people that are going to say, and I don't think it's going to be the majority of people, but there are some people that are going to say, well, if I have to watch all this stuff just to watch this one show that I'm interested in, then I'm not going to watch any of it.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, it's the same with the Marvel fatigue. People feel like they have to watch everything.
And I'm a huge, like, Marvel is one, like the MCU is one where, like, when a character shows up, like, I've watched every Marvel thing ever. So I'm sort of like, you know, with the, you know, I guess a Julia Louis-Dreyfus in Black Widow would be the equivalent of the Cad Bane thing from last night. Like, I knew that. But even as a Marvel fan, I worry that they're doing too much as far as like, you can't, you know, if it becomes like a requirement, like a reading requirement, then it becomes like work. It becomes like school, because then you have to sit through things that you don't necessarily want to watch. And then I think some people are just going to say like, whatever, and throw their hands up, and you're going to lose that person. So I think that, I think that they're probably, they're sort of remolding what it means to be a Star Wars fan in many ways with what they're doing now. And I don't necessarily, I think for the Star Wars brand, that's a good thing, because you want people that are going to watch every single thing that you do. I do think that there's going to be this adjustment process, and I'm certainly part of it, where I have to sort of face this decision of, if I want to fully appreciate these shows, I now have to go back and watch every single thing Star Wars that I haven't seen, which is, by the way, it's not like 2 movies. It's like, you know, 7 episodes of TV and 3 more episodes of a different show and 1 more season of a different show, it can get a little daunting. I've got to be honest, but I'm also hoping that they will do what they sort of did with Bo-Katan, which is provide the cliff notes enough so that I can at least follow this story.
Yeah.
Because I like the look of the character. It seemed like a really good villain.
Yeah.
So, maybe this is, again, it's going to bring people into that maybe hadn't been exposed, which is a good thing for Star Wars.
Yeah.
Did you feel like they did a good explanation? Because you could tell he was a bad guy who worked for the syndicate.
I knew he was a bad guy, and he was threatening Timothy Oliphant, which is never. I'm automatic. If you're threatening Timothy Oliphant, I'm just going to hate you on
You're
general.
out. Like, you're just
So,
out of here.
you're
Yeah.
out. You're on the bad side. So
Yeah.
they did good in that respect.
I thought it was interesting that they chose not to reveal his name for a character that is more or less a deep cut. I would have liked somebody to be like, oh, is it Cad Bane? Like a whisper or something in the background just to give those clues. Because there are people who watch the show and are not online. That they're not going to be on Twitter being like, who was that guy that was on today? Which it is interesting, and it kind of begs the question of accessibility and like how Star Wars is kind of moving towards this more synergy focused, everything's connected, everybody's moving between shows. I mean, there was even a deep cut today for the Aftermath books with Cobb Vanth. I mean, there's the Freetown reference, which, only people who read Aftermath or engaged in the discourse after it was called, Mos Pelgo in The Mandalorian really got that reference. And those references work, but when you introduce these new characters, I worry that you are going to lose people and people are going to drop off, especially when you have a TV series that is called the Book of Boba Fett, and Boba Fett has approximately 5 seconds of screen time and no actual dialogue. And then you're introducing these characters they're not super familiar with as well. So it is interesting to see it, and I hope that maybe next week we'll get more. I'm sure that Cad Bane will probably turn up in the Bad Batch again, I'm assuming, since he was already, had this vendetta with Fennec Shand, which when that episode happened in the Bad Batch, I was like, okay, yeah, he's going to show up in the Book of Boba Fett. That's like a dead giveaway. But what did everybody think about the design for Cad Bane? I saw some people who were like, that is not the Cad Bane I think of when I see the cartoon. Was he scarier? Was the makeup what you expected? Did you was there anything that you had expectations for an appearance, John? I mean,
well, they could have I suppose you could argue they could have gave him some more lines in his face, a little more wrinkles or whatever, if you really want to be super technical. But those are the same people that are complaining about Ahsoka Tano's. Yeah, those things. I mean, for God's sakes, this is a live action version of it. So some things are going to be different. Let's grow up and deal with that and be okay with it. I mean, it wasn't a terrible design by any stretch of the imagination. When he lifted his hat and you saw those eyes were terrifying. Right.
Oh my God.
It served its purpose. Plus, they brought back the voice actor. And I thought that was genius. So you keep the continuity going with that character, and you get the insinuation that this is a badass dude. And the standoff, and I mean, the shots from behind Cobb Vanth, where you see the full body of Cad Bane, you see the pipes coming out. I mean, all of it just works so well for me, and I don't understand anybody that could have an issue with it other than something really small or nitpicky about the overall appearance, look, and presentation of this character.
Yeah, Laura.
Yeah, I was obsessed with it. When they were I knew when I saw him, I was like, oh my God, because I own his replica guns. I'm like, oh my God, I have to go find it because I'm so excited.
Yeah.
And
he's sitting up there on my bookshelf.
Yeah, I was just like, oh my God, how are they gonna reveal him? Because I'm thinking, how are they gonna do this animation to live action? And when he lifted it and he was terrifying and the skin looked so good, I was like, this is amazing. This is what everything I expected from this character. It just looked so good and real and everything. And I was just like, he's brought to life. And I was really happy about it because I was screaming. I'm like, and I can't reveal spoilers on Twitter because I don't want to do that to people because I watched it at midnight. So I'm like, okay, I can't. So I'm like, this is amazing. That's all I could say.
You're like, I'm just going to go to sleep.
I'm going to sleep and think about his skin. And it was just because it made me scared because this character is a scary, cruel bounty hunter. So it's I want to see that reflected. And people who haven't watched the animated series, you want to see that he looks evil and he looks bad and he's ruthless and it reflects that because he's scary looking, the eyes and everything. So I thought it was perfect.
Yeah.
Yes. do we think that Cobb Vanth is okay? He only got shot once. His deputy is definitely toast. That was like 3 shots to the chest.
You can't do Timothy Oliphant. If you have Timothy Oliphant, you need to utilize him. Like that man is beautiful.
Yeah, I was frustrated that we didn't see him again in the Mandalorian series, and seeing him here for one episode. I'm with Dan. I mean, since Deadwood, I've been an Oliphant guy, and so the fact that you put him in his natural element, which is essentially a gunslinger. Remember, he was the voice of the West in Rango. This guy just lives and breathes Westerns and is an outlaw. I know about Westerns, and so seeing him come through, I want to see more with him. Give me the Cobb Vanth series that will have the connections, as you were mentioning here earlier, Maggie. So I loved seeing him, but we got to get more of him. He's such a presence. We've got to get more of him.
I think that's why they shot him in the shoulder, because it will motivate Freetown to rise up against the Pikes. So I think it's a smart move to like shoot him in the shoulder. And then kill his deputy. I shot the sheriff.
It's the opposite of the song.
Yeah, but I killed the deputy. But I think it's just an inspiration, motivation to.
That's great.
I hadn't thought of that either. and that was such the typical Western scenario too. Yeah. You've got the sheriff, and the standoff, and then the deputy over there causing trouble. Just go back inside, dude. Just stop. And that was such an interesting character. I did not get that actor's name, but just like his entire little part there of being like, you need to go park your ship over in the flats over there. Did you hear me? Like, so ready to be a deputy. Very sad that he got shot down on his big outing. Speaking of other characters that may or may not be dead, right after this shootout with Cad Bane, we went back to Mos Espa, to the sanctuary, where 2 Pikes show up with I can't remember, blanking on the name, the canister that they're playing with Cobb Vanth in the cold opening. They come in all, scary, dark auras about them, sit down, leave something behind, boom, big explosion. Were you expecting that? And is Max Rebo alive? I'm worried. Like, he has had 2 near-death experiences. Did they kill Max Rebo today?
I'm pretty sure Rebo wasn't in there. I'm pretty sure he found his way out of there.
Okay.
But I don't know what happens with Garza Fwip, and I can see the anger online if they kill her off in this way.
Flames around my face.
Yeah. I see the fridging. I see all the arguments coming, and they're totally valid, because why do you bring an action like this? Present this character and then they just blow her up. So I'd be very surprised if she's dead. It was a great Untouchables reference for those of you who've seen that film. Hey, mister, you forgot your bag. Boom. It's just perfect.
That poor droid.
But it also elevates the battle. Now this gets people who are around this area now understanding, hey, this is either what's going to happen to you, or you better be quiet and sit down, or fight, or you better be quiet and sit down, or we're going to blow you up too. So it's one of the two. So they're causing these reactions to happen. So it's a way of kind of accelerating him getting more people, Boba Fett, that is, to be on his side in this fight against the Pike Syndicate.
And I thought it was interesting because Cad Bane more or less tells Cobb, if you stay out of this, you won't have any trouble. And Garza's not involved with Boba Fett really at all. Like, he comes in, asks questions, but she's not aligning herself with him as far as we know, unless it's happened off screen. So it felt like a very targeted, like, this is a safe place and I'm going to blow it up to like lay down the law, which I was kind of shocked by. And the fact that, obviously we have one more episode, they're going to, have follow through with that, but the sharp shift from this explosion and questionable deaths to time to make your decision, Grogu.
Yes.
Do you want to be a
weird cut.
I was like,
that was a very weird cut.
That's totally fair. That was weird.
Yeah.
I was like, but then it also, like, trying to find theme and things. I did find myself wondering on my second watch if that shift from like making a decision plays into some part about this indecisiveness in Tatooine. And we even got like the great line about how, it's more than just like one town or one city. It's a whole planet that's being taken over essentially hostilely by the Pike Syndicate. So, I'm always trying to find those themes, because I don't want to believe that they're just like throwing the baby out with the bathwater and Boba Fett's the baby, not this baby.
You can make that connection. Everything is a decision. That's been going on. Yeah.
I just wonder though, how long is next week's episode going to be? Because we now have all of these different storylines, and Boba Fett's been absent for the last 2 weeks, and we have one episode left. And
And I
I
saw
mean,
somebody say that it might be Robert directing it.
Oh no.
And
Yeah,
I'm like,
I
his
mean, that would make
episodes have been the
sense.
shortest episodes. And
Yeah.
I'm like terrified.
But it's like they set up this whole. I mean, they took a very. They were not quick about setting up this whole thing and tying it to the flashbacks, and then we've taken kind of a 2-week break from that storyline, the Boba Fett storyline on Tatooine. Even though some of these things may fold in, but it's like that's my big thing is like they were so deliberate. The first 4 episodes were so deliberate, and now it seems like unless next week's episode is feature length. You're either going to not resolve a lot, which I think is going to make a lot of people go like, oh, or you're going to rush the resolution, which I think is going to have the same thing. So I think again, narratively, they've left themselves a very interesting situation here for next episode. How are you going to either resolve this or at least put it into a place where it doesn't just feel like a cheap cliffhanger? And I know people say like, well, that's television. It's like, I understand that, but even with a cliffhanger, there's generally some sort of narrative resolution. Like one of the best cliffhangers of all time, the best of both worlds on, I hate to invoke the name Star Trek: The Next Generation.
I was just going to say that too.
It was one of the best cliffhangers of all time, but at the same time, you took a character in Captain Picard to a new place where he's now one of the Borg. And so you have resolved a major narrative thing. At the same time, you've left this big open-ended what's going to happen next. And that's my question with the show is like, either way they go, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how they handle it narratively in a way that I think is going to satisfy. You're never going to satisfy everybody, obviously, but satisfy enough people.
I feel like they need to resolve it because we have Mandalorian season 3. And I feel like if we bring that into Mandalorian, it just feels clunky in a way because it's like, oh, we're gonna, because like Mandalorian should be its own like narrative because again, we only get like 6, 7, 8 episodes total, and so I think they need to resolve it. And yes, I feel like it's going to be rushed because there's too many storylines happening now, and I thought that they would just leave the Luke and the Grogu stuff to like meet for the next season, but they brought it into this one. So I feel like they need to somehow conclude it. Because it just feels like why bring it up when you're not going to address it then and there. So I'm kind of like iffy about that because it's not the same show. We need like if you're going to like leave it open, then have it for like a mystery for the chapter like season 3 of Mandalorian, but not the Book of Boba Fett because I just feel like they need to establish the separation between the two. Like I need to get to know Boba Fett, and I need the story of Boba Fett to be concluded, or have a cliffhanger for Boba Fett without Mando, without Yoda, Baby Yoda, without all those people. And
it was heavily foreshadowed to me that Boba Fett was going to ride a Rancor. Remember the Rancor?
That's
when
right.
the show had a Rancor in it, and like
mentioned
it was down in the thing that was going to be, and it's like the Rancor is nowhere to be seen for the last couple episodes.
He's still depressed from moving, so
I guess he's still settling into his new digs.
We're totally getting the Patton Oswalt ending. I just want to make sure everybody.
It seems like we are,
yeah.
It's all coming, and
the
thing
the
is,
beginning. I think it's going to be the end too.
Yeah. And the thing is, I think the Luke thing will bear fruit because remember that Luke is connected to the Republic, so the New Republic. So will Leia? I mean, don't be surprised if we see Leia, who we've already seen in CGI before. There's no way a Mod Squad, Chris Anton, and Cobb Vanth and whatever's left of his town and some of the people in Tatooine, along with Boba and Fennec, are enough for a Pike syndicate that is backed up by Crimson Dawn. There's no way that's enough. That's not logical in any way, shape, or form unless we're doing like 99-cent movies type approach because it doesn't make any sense.
No.
So they're going to have some kind of power. We've already seen the X-Wing fighters patrolling around Tatooine. So there's got to be something that comes to a head here. Is Luke in some way going to let the Empire, going to the Republic know, and then they're going to send in their fighters, fight the Pike Syndicate with Boba Fett against the Pikes there? That is what I think might be a way to kind of connect everything up and make it make sense overall. Then probably Grogu will show up with Luke, and R2-D2. So that's going to be interesting if that happens. But yeah, look, we've all said, no way they're showing Luke. No way. Then Luke shows up. No way Grogu is coming. Grogu shows up. So don't be surprised if Leia shows up. And people are gonna lose their shit if Alden Ehrenreich shows up. I'll tell you that right now.
If he shows up with the Millennium Falcon, I will absolutely come unglued next week in the best of ways.
He's already Harrison Ford. He can't throw an Alden Ehrenreich in a Harrison Ford continuity. He's canonically Harrison Ford.
That's fair, Dan. Totally fair. So maybe they'll do.
There are more than 3 interesting people in the galaxy. I'm very convinced of this when it comes to Star Wars.
It's so funny because I am of the same mind. Like the number of times that I have complained about the fact that there's like 4 characters in all of Star Wars and they're all Skywalkers. But then when it's done well, I'm like, okay, this works. Like,
right.
It has been working well for me. Like, I think I was in the minority last week of thinking that Luke was going to show up this week. I think on every appearance of podcast that I was on, like nobody believed me. I was like, I think it's going to happen. Yeah. I want to know, do we think we're going to see Grogu's decision? Like the cold open next week is Grogu in Mandalorian armor and Luke climbing into his X-Wing to be like, all right, kid, I guess I'm taking you back. I get a new first student now. And it will be funny because it'll be his second first student if Grogu leaves, because technically Leia was his first student and that didn't work out. And then if Grogu and that doesn't work out, and then he gets Ben and that doesn't work out, like maybe you shouldn't be.
Have we considered he's not a very good teacher?
He's not.
I mean, well, The Last Jedi kind of was. That's what it was about.
Yeah, yes. Master Johnson couldn't coach the Lakers. Sometimes just because you're a great player doesn't mean you can actually coach the team. It can be bad for you. So. But yeah, I mean, I think that's all possible. But I got to push back. You two are saying like, oh, there's more. Yes, there are more characters, and you can see them in the Clone Wars. You can see them in the Bad Batch.
Yes.
You can read about them in all the books. There are great characters that are going on around this time. But you've got to make the effort to go and discover them because they're there.
I've read all of it. I've watched all of it. I am not Dan.
Just because we go
it's
back
called
to
the Book of Boba Fett, and we talked about every character except for Boba Fett.
I know.
Showing up next week. Like, what's Boba Fett gonna do? Like, if Han Solo shows up, how in the world does that do any? I mean,
we joked about this Avengers team up like a couple weeks ago. Like, are we going to get everybody showing up? But also, it would thematically work if Luke shows up and it's like, hey, what's going on? You need help? Tatooine's my home world.
Right.
Like, of course I want to lend a helping hand. And I think it would work, and I think the payoff would be there. I'm sure people would decry it as fan service, but this fan would be happy. So I'll take that service. I would love to see the original trilogy era characters getting to be used in fun ways to benefit the new characters.
Yeah.
I think that it worked for the most part in parts of the sequel trilogy that we have them supporting the new characters. But now we have these new characters that are playing in a sandbox that already has very familiar characters in it. Like, we know exactly what's going on. We know that like Poe Dameron is 6 years old and somewhere, and we know what's happening with his mom and his dad. I mean, that's another family that would be a fantastic introduction and inclusion in this era, because we know a lot of fixed points. And I just want those connections. I want to see that kind of all come together. And honestly, based off of like how Kathleen Kennedy talked about all of this at the Disney Investors Day, it feels like we're leading up to something very large. She very much implied that all of these spinoffs are interconnected and leading up to this giant event. And I secretly want it to be a movie so that we have like more time with, the characters and the development and stuff, and like one singular voice kind of guiding the journey. But yeah, I'm hopeful that's what's happening. It seems like maybe.
It's no coincidence either that we've enjoyed the episodes not directed by Robert Rodriguez a little bit more. And look, I love Robert Rodriguez. I do. I love him as a Latino. I absolutely love him, but I know he's inconsistent. And so what you saw from that episode, The Mandalorian, was great. And then you saw the first few episodes, like it didn't quite, he's not always going to get there every time. And Filoni just absolutely directed, in my opinion, one of the greatest episodes of Star Wars television we've ever seen. Bryce Dallas Howard, a very close second, if not equal to what he just did in last week's episode. So this is what's possible if you have the right people involved directing this stuff and narrating the stuff. So you make a great point, Maggie. One person in charge of this movie with all these characters could really establish so much for Star Wars to launch off of if they lead to this thing that Kathleen Kennedy was previewing, as you mentioned.
Yeah. Where was everybody after the Jedi with Dave Filoni's direction? I wasn't a huge fan of the Ahsoka episode in Chapter 2. I thought there were some directing choices that I know it's a very controversial opinion, and I was fully prepared to be on like that same opinion this morning, but after the episode, it was like he's clearly worked to improve his directorial skills. He's like definitely been watching movies and trying to learn things, because it's not a natural skill. You don't just wake up one day and you're like the best director. You're not Bryce Dallas Howard every day. But I really loved some of the things he did. I mean, there were so many beautiful visuals in this episode with the planet where Luke's, we still don't know what planet that is. It was never named in the comics either. But this beautiful, lush planet, very much Dagobah aesthetics and different shots, you know, different angles, very beautiful lighting. Did anybody else feel like there was a marked improvement between the two episodes? Or maybe it's the same and you love the other episode too? Laura? Oh.
I feel like he's like, it's established now, because when people who don't read watch the originals, you have to learn who Ahsoka is. But now that we established, these are established characters, I feel like he doesn't need to do exposition regarding Ahsoka and the whole thing. And so I feel like he's more at ease, because like we're seeing people we know. We know Luke's story. We know what he's trying to build. He builds a school, and we know what kind of person he is. So I feel like there's a big difference between the first Ahsoka that we meet in The Mandalorian and the Ahsoka that we see now, because this is live action, and we need to establish these characters for the live action. And I feel like he has a good grasp of how Ahsoka is, because now that we have the series, I feel like he's able to structure her better and knows her better. And then this episode was mainly Luke and Grogu, so I feel like we already have this history that we all know that he has this school that he's gonna build. So I feel like this direction, he knew what he was doing regarding the structure and how it's supposed to, the characters, because these are his characters, his babies, like, you know, it's Ahsoka and everyone. So I feel like he has a good grasp now. And yes, like you said, we improve as time goes on as a director. So I feel like he did a great job, because these characters are already established. He doesn't have to do a whole exposition regarding them.
Yeah, I agree. Dan, any thoughts?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it kind of goes to, you know, what John was saying about the Rodriguez episodes. I think it helps for Dave Filoni and Bryce Dallas Howard that they got the 2 episodes featuring fan favorite characters that you did not have to establish or tell the backstories of. You can just throw in the love that people already bring for Din, or the people that people already bring for Grogu and Luke, etc. I think that helps their case a lot. I think that Dave Filoni is obviously he and Jon Favreau, I think, are obviously the creative heir apparent to George Lucas, in the sense that, like, Kathleen Kennedy, yes, maybe the head of the board, she may be the president of Lucasfilm, but creatively, it seems very obvious that they have handed over kind of big picture stuff to Dave Filoni, and, you know, singular projects to Jon Favreau, and those are 2 great talents. I think that with Filoni's stuff, it's obvious that he brings such a love for the lore, for better or worse, for better for so many people, for worse for a lot of people that have catching up to do. But he brings such a love of the entire universe to what he does that he just plows full speed ahead through it. And, you know, it's basically like, this is for the people that know this. And if you know, you know, and if you don't, you don't. And we're not stopping. We're not slowing down. This is what I'm doing here. And I think that that's the tempo that he seems to be bringing to every show now. And I think you just have to, you're either already on board to the train or you're catching up to the train. And I'm catching up to the train. I think there's some people that are going to stop running after the train, but for the people that are on board the train, it looks like it's a crazy ride, and it's just starting.
Is it the train that's running through Tatooine? I need to know if I need to bring the good shoes.
Well,
so
I
don't get
not
paid.
Because that one was not that was an ill-fated train. But maybe the good version of that train.
Okay.
I'm still learning how to work my speeder bike. I'm like the Tusken Raider. I'm like going in reverse and like trying to figure out how to steer and catch up. But like, there's some people that are already like chilling on the train. They've got a drink droid, like, you know, serving them cocktails and martinis. That's where Max Rebo is. He's on the train.
Oh, totally. He knew it was coming.
Yes.
I'm trying to catch up with the train.
Max had inside information. Max is
he knew what was
Max is okay, and the jizz music is still okay. Like,
yes,
Yep.
I refuse. But speaking of characters and their modes of transportation, Dan and that Naboo starfighter, like, Razor Crest who? He seems to be perfectly at ease. But there's been a lot of conversation over the last week on Twitter. Terrible place to have conversations. Just terrible.
The worst,
About
really.
how interesting it is. And we touched on this a little bit last week as well, that he went from having the Razor Crest, which was clearly meant for carrying a lot of carbonated bounties, places to sleep, places to rest. It was his home. I mean, every part of him was in that ship. And now we have the Starfighter, which is arguably a very smaller ship and not one that you sleep in. Where do you think this fits into where things are going for Din? Is there potential for him to stay in Tatooine if things turn out well next week? Is that going to be a home base for him with the palace, working with, Boba and Fennec moving forward? Where do you see that element of the story going? Anybody can go first.
Wow.
I'm not going to throw that right on one person.
I could see it going if Din plays a big role, and I think it would be sort of symbolically very appropriate if Boba decides, well, all right, I'm on Tatooine now. This is my world. I'm now the Daimo. What if he gives him the fire spray and that's his land craft? That's his high speed performance craft. But then he inherits Boba's ship, and now that's his home base.
Oh, I love that.
Wow. So he has the fire spray? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah. So he's got both. He kind of he can park the fighter it's kind of like cargo in the fire spray, and if he needs to go down to the surface or whatever, he's got it there. But his base is now the fire spray.
You're not going to need this.
I think that would be a great idea, but I also feel like we're not going to see him be a bounty hunter next season. I think he's going to go to the mines and try to, redeem himself as a Mandalorian first, and that's why he has the Naboo speeder, which he hasn't named yet. So I think next season he's going to stick to that, because I think the main focus will be I need to be a Mandalorian again. And then we're going to see Grogu join him. I honestly think Grogu is going to join him because it's why bring that up? And plus everyone wants to see him again. It doesn't make sense to.
How could you say no to this face?
Yeah. I think this is the money maker. So you need to have this character back onto the series. So I feel like Grogu's going to choose the chainmail, and we're going to see him go to the mines and redeem himself as try to redeem himself as a Mandalorian with his little baby with him, and I think that's going to be, he's not going to, and then maybe when he comes back, he'll come back to Tatooine and get the fire spray. But I think next season, we're just going to see him with the Naboo speeder. Yeah. Starfighter.
Yeah.
This is why actors say don't work with animals and kids, because you'll never be the focus. And everyone's this is the money maker. It ain't. You want money? This.
Have him do this. I will buy everything of him doing this.
You're not wrong. My girlfriend has not watched any of Star Wars, but she saw baby Yoda in some Mandalorian episode I was watching, and she started, and that's the only thing she's ever watched. And it was because of baby Yoda, and it's the only time she watched. She hates Book of Boba Fett. She's not into it at all. And then baby Yoda showed up, and then she was all into it. So you're not wrong, Laura.
You're not wrong.
But I mean, the Jedi, can we say this? The Jedi are kind of jerks.
They're terrible. I hate them.
It's bad philosophy.
I am anti-Jedi.
It's incredible how we fell in love with the Jedi. For those of us who are watching, or any on the panel who are original trilogy fans, that's how you come to Star Wars. You love the Jedi. Yes, the philosophy makes sense. Yes, good versus evil. Yes, you've got to meditate. You got to be in your zone. You got to be great. Do what's best. Redeem people. And then as we've gone along, because our society has questioned philosophy and religion and all these things. By the way, Maggie, fantastic article you wrote last week on Collider. People should read that, exploring all of that. And we've kind of changed our minds overall about all this stuff. We start to get obsessed with cult documentaries and all this kind of stuff, and we see the ramifications of being part of a groupthink philosophy and what that can lead to when you have the wrong people in charge, or people who are not aware of all the different ways it can change. And so we're seeing that. When I saw him making that decision, I never thought I'd be like, dude, what a jerk. What are you doing? You can do both. If you're strong enough, you can do both. And then for me, I was just like, man, this is such a strange thing. And this may lead to what Dan mentioned earlier, and you mentioned a little bit, Maggie, too. This may be why Luke wasn't a good teacher, because he didn't change to go along with what was changing in the universe and the philosophies and the mindsets, because he'd only learned one way to do it. And so this may be something that bears fruit down the road.
Do you guys feel like it reflected how the Mandalorian, the armorer, and Luke, how they're strict? Like,
they operate on a binary.
Yeah,
There's,
like,
there's no in between.
Balance between the
100%.
Yep.
Were you surprised, speaking of the Jedi, that Din did not mention the Darksaber at all? Ooh. Like he was with two. Well, Ahsoka's not a Jedi, but a Force user with two Jedi, and just never thought, hey, I have this thing that lights up kind of like your blades. What do I do with it? And also like the fact that he just learned of somebody who was both a Mandalorian and a Jedi. Like I was really surprised, and that's why I kind of walked away from this episode thinking like, okay, that's not resolved. We're getting something next week. Like there's more of this. They set up way too much to expect us to wait for Mando season 3. Whenever that may come out, it felt like there was a lot of clues, and they haven't really been settled up until after things shifted after episode 4. They haven't exactly been settled about where things seem to be leading. I mean, the Luke thing, everything seems to be kind of fitting into place. So I'm curious to see if we get somebody trying to teach him how to use the Darksaber. I mean, I would love Ahsoka to be that person. That would be awesome. But thoughts on that? I mean, were you expecting him to have that conversation after just walking away from the armorer and all of that last week, or are you expecting that to be a Mando season 3 thing?
I think there'll be too much. I think if they explain it, then it'll be a longer episode and a longer storyline. So I feel like they did it intentionally to like, okay, let's not have that. And also, I think Din doesn't trust them yet. Like even though his baby's with them. But I don't think he trusts them enough to tell them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think that he knows what the result would be if you go to either a Jedi or a Force user, and Ahsoka, who's certainly closely affiliated with Jedi. I think he knows that if he's like, oh, by the way, you know those powerful weapons that only you can have? I've got one, and it also has like mystical energy. I think they'd be like, you're giving that to me because I don't know who should have it, but it's not you. And then it would just lead to more conflict. So I think
that'd be everybody being like, Din, you're not supposed to have that.
Right.
Yeah, I think he's been in the game long enough to know that you don't always have to pull out your weapon. You kind of have to say like, all right, let's read the room a little bit here, and then see what to say.
Right, because either Luke or Ahsoka could challenge him for that Darksaber and kick his ass and take the thing from him. So yeah, it does because you're supposed to win it by combat and following it. But yeah, I think Laura's absolutely right. I think he doesn't trust them yet, and like a good bounty hunter or a good whatever Western guy, you don't easily surrender your cards, as Dan said there. And I also think that he doesn't know that they're the ones that are supposed to. And remember, this was alluded to last week with the armorer conversation, how the Jedi philosophy is contradictory to the Mandalorian philosophy, at least the sect that he's a part of. So I don't think he'd be that. And I think that's why he's checking up on Luke. I think he doesn't. Yes, he loves. And that's a great moment where Ahsoka says, are you sure you're doing this for you or for him? Who are you doing this for? That's a great moment, but I think it connects to their back and forth that he doesn't trust the Jedi. And no Mandalorian should, considering what happened to Boba, but he doesn't trust the Jedi. Is like having his issues with it. I think it's a nice little kind of subtle conflict to be kind of laying the groundwork for that may bear fruit down the road in a verbal or physical confrontation between Luke and Mando, possibly, which could be really interesting if that happens.
All right. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up and head out of here? No.
A lot of ground to cover next week. I'm anxious to see what they do.
Yeah, I just hope Garza's alive. She better be, because I'll be pissed off.
Oh, Garza.
I know, me too.
Yeah, that's all I have to say. Her, and I want Max Rebo to be okay too.
Yes.
I hope we get the rematch between Cad Bane and Fennec. I want that rematch next week if we get it, because that I'm looking forward to that off of Bad Batch. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Yes, indeed. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on the Hollywood Critics Association's Book of Boba Fett Aftershow. Thank you for watching live and for watching after the fact. There's so many fun shows that the HCA puts on. You can find me on Twitter at Maggie of the Town. Where can everybody find you? Everybody's got their usernames there. So, but does anybody have anything they want to share before we go? Any articles, interviews, podcasts coming out that you want to make sure people check into? Nope. All right. We're good to go. All right. Bye. Bye.